All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Q&A, and thank you very much for having a look at the documentary, Kangaroo Love-Hate Story. My name is Susan Sorensen, and I am the Regional Group Leader of the Northern Beaches Animal Justice Party. And I would like to introduce you to our very special guests as well, and our fantastic link that we have with an independent magazine, the Tawny Frogmouth, Liam Carroll, and he will be operating the Q&A tonight. And we also have two co-producers of Kangaroo, the movie, Love-Hate Story, and that's Kate McIntyre-Clare and Mick McIntyre. And I'd really like to thank all three of you so very much for putting together tonight's screening. Now, before we start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where each of us are meeting tonight. For me, I'm on the Gayamagal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here with us tonight. And may we all work together with kindness, respect, acknowledgement, and a common goal of caring for and protecting the land and all the inhabitants that we share the land with. So without any further ado, I will pass you on back, lead you over to Liam. Thanks, Liam.
Oh, thanks, Susan. Thank you, Susan, so much for firstly making me aware of this issue only a few months ago, really, with the Spitbridge protest and the following Tawny article and getting to meet Kate and Mick. And I'd first like to say thank you to Kate and Mick for this phenomenal film. And also, right now, I know that the viewers would be sort of in a sort of numb feeling. And if you want to, you guys made the film and have been through this many a time. We've got some words of wisdom. I think now would be an awesome time to share. So I'll hand over to Mick and Kate.
Thanks, Liam. Yeah, look, we really appreciate that some of you have watched the movie tonight for the first time. And we know that it's horrifying. It's horrifying because we're Australian and perhaps we didn't know what was going on here. It's horrifying because we love kangaroos and we didn't know what was happening. It's our national icon. And it really is a horrifying practice that happens. And I think it's good to just acknowledge that that's painful. So we really hear you when you're telling us in the chat on both the film and now about how hard it is. It's been a huge journey to make this film. So we often have to carry this information and pass it on to people all over the world, what is actually happening here in Australia with our kangaroos. So thanks for coming tonight. We really appreciate that you all come. Thanks to Susan and Liam for really reinvigorating another round of people who care about kangaroos. And we're really happy to answer any questions you have and let you know what's happening now following the film and just be with you for the next hour to chat.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. Yeah, the great thing is the film was released 2 years ago, and in that 2 years, there's been this groundswell of change. That's a very pleasing aspect for us as filmmakers to see what the impact the film has had, and yeah, I'm sure we're going to get to talk about some of that tonight. But that's been the most pleasing aspect for Kate and myself, because as Australians, we had to find out ourselves what was going on, and we carry that shame as Australians when we unfolded the story. And you never know what's going to happen to a story like this, but the good news is that it's really having an impact. So yeah, I hope we get to talk about that more tonight.
No, perfect. Well, thanks so much, and we'll let the questions come through as they come through. And then, yeah, the first question that I had, that's sort of selfishly, I guess, but how can people who have just watched this film probably feeling sort of furious about what they've seen, but how can they most effective help change and help protect kangaroos without, it's so entrenched that they're apparently a pest, and the amazing what you've done is unearth that that's not really the case, but what could they actually do to make a good change?
Yeah, well, that's what Mick and I have been working on. One of the things that Mick and I did after the film was create an NGO called Kangaroos Alive, because as filmmakers, we really wanted to tell the story, but we realized that the work's gone on. And, you know, some of you will know that it came out a few years ago, and unfortunately, it's still as relevant today as it was then. And even when we started, I see someone's asking how long it took to make the movie, but really a long time, because you know, it's a long time to get all those interviews, travel around Australia, travel, you know, to those international countries. And so it takes a while to get the story straight. And we tried to make it as interesting as possible, and for people to really hear both points of view, or all the points of view, really, because the kangaroo is our national icon, and it really is everybody's. It's wildlife. It doesn't belong to anyone. So to really let that dialogue come alive in Australia felt really important, and we felt it was a subject that wasn't really being talked about. So that was a really key part of putting the film together. And of course, that what we planned for the film has really happened, and there's been so much discussion since the film came out, both here in Australia and internationally, about what we're doing. And look, we're really pleased with the amount of people that are really interested in this subject now. And there's a lot going on in different places. Mick, do you want to talk about some of the things?
Yeah, I mean, we're so blessed to have the Animal Justice Party. Big shout out to the AJP. In making the film, it was quite fortuitous for us as storytellers that Mark Pearson gets elected as we're making the film. It couldn't have been better for the story, and he's gone on to, you know, make a huge impact. And so I'm sure that people watching this will want to know what the AJP are up to, and I'm sure Susan's going to give us the links on updates on that. But first of all, people need to be aware of what's happening to our kangaroos, and they can have a direct impact by the choices they make in the supermarket or in the shoe store or in the handbag store. I mean, that, you know, most people aren't even aware that when they go buying pet food, the first thing they should look at is whether it's got our national icon in the pet food, or when they go and buy Adidas or Nike sneakers, to make sure it hasn't got kangaroo skins in it, or, people have no idea of how many products has kangaroo products in it. So that's the first thing, consumer awareness. And once they find out where kangaroo products are being sold, they can obviously pressure from a consumer point of view. That's probably the first thing people can do straight away. And then obviously the conversation that is starting to be had right across Australia, uncomfortable as it is. I mean, we experienced it ourselves in making the film. You know, it does strain your friendships and your relationships when you start sticking up for kangaroos. But thank God there's a lot of people out there that are willing to do it and have the conversation. And look, maybe this is a good time to ask Susan for some links, because I know the AJP have got some fantastic initiatives as well to support.
I'd love to put the links in, but I can't see where to put them in. So I haven't got a little thing on my bit.
We'll do whatever we can afterwards to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Susan,
can I just say also that, just adding on to what Kate and Mick have just said, that it's in numbers that we can make a big impact. And I think it's combined with the education of what is actually going on with kangaroos in this country. And that's what the documentary was able to show us. But it's also telling our friends and the people that we know about what we've learnt, and continuing to do that, to try and break down the old, outdated attitudes that we've all been ingrained in the whole life that we've been living here in Australia. And I think it's just really a great thing to do initially would be to join a party such as the Animal Justice Party, who is going to be able to give kangaroos a voice, and all other animals, at the parliamentary level. So that's what I would like to say there. Yeah.
And this can be a question to all of you, I would say. How do you think it has become entrenched in Australian psyche that kangaroos are pests?
Can I just say something in regard to that? Just my own experience. When I was very young, 21, I moved to Warrina. It was my first job. I lived in a house with a roo shooter. I got to see the truck with all the big hooks. And I didn't see millions of kangaroos, not even thousands of kangaroos during the day, but at night time there were a few because they go across the road. And it was just this whole, and I was very young then, and I was very easily led into believing that there were thousands of kangaroos, particularly when I hit my car on a poor kangaroo that was trying to jump across the road. And it was not until quite a few years later that I realised that there weren't millions of them. There were just the kangaroos who were going across the road. And I think it's just in the fabric of society. It's the fact that the government, as we saw in the documentary, that the government is actually enabling and encouraging this sort of colonial way of thinking. And that's the only way I can describe it. It is a colonial way of thinking. Right from the early ages ago when Australia was first colonised, and that seems to have just continued on.
And as Mick mentioned before too, and the Animal Justice Party has only been around a very short time, and the film has come into being at a similar sort of time. How are you finding people respond to the pressure that an Animal Justice Party can apply to the more mainstream parties? How's that going?
Well, I think because we now have two members in Parliament, Honourable Mark Pearson and also Emma Hurst, just two people in Parliament has made a huge difference in the amplification of the voices of animals. And it is actually, I'm amazed at how they're able to work in such a way to be able to make alliances with other members from other parties. So there are alliances being made. There are enemies as well, but I think that's the way that they need to be operating, to be able to get along, work together to deal with the issues. And I really believe that the Animal Justice Party is doing that, because behind those two members in Parliament who are members of the Legislative Council, who are supposed, who attempt to keep the government, hold them to account. There are a huge number of people in Australia, and New South Wales, you should be talking New South Wales, who are in a lot of different regional groups who are working together to raise awareness about the AJP, about what's happening to animals and what we need to do and what we can easily do to make a difference for kangaroos, for koalas, for emus, for magpies, for companion animals, all sorts of animals, and also farmed animals, particularly those that are trapped in industrial farming practices. So I think it is giving people a run for their money, if I can say it that way. And the more we have, the more members we have, if we have a big membership base, we'll be able to have more power to be able to stand up for the animals.
Liam, you saw in the film that Mark has been pushing for an inquiry in the New South Wales Parliament. Yes. The great news is he succeeded, and hats off to Mark, because it got shut down when the film was made. He was trying and it got shut down, but here we are 2 years later and he has succeeded, and good on him, because a lot of the people watching this Q&A will have been have experienced some of the testimony that was put to the inquiry only a month ago. Yeah, groundbreaking. It was a game changer. The testimony was so damning at a New South Wales parliamentary level that and we're very hopeful when the inquiry's findings come out in I don't know, Susan can give us an update, but we're expecting it sometime in October. This will be a game changer. They will not be able to ignore the damning eyewitness testimony of people who came and gave testimony to this inquiry. So hats off to the AJP and Mark for getting this inquiry up, because it's going to be very, very difficult for the New South Wales government to ignore the inquiry's findings. And it's now on the public record just how mismanaged, if that's the right word, or mistreated kangaroos have been in the state of New South Wales. And the thing about New South Wales is that we're hopeful that other states will follow, because New South Wales is the biggest culprit when it comes to the numbers of kangaroos killed.
And getting back to there's sort of this vilification of kangaroos. And so Kate Patterson talking about how her own parents referring to kangaroos as jumping rats, as if it's a bad thing, as if you can compare these things. Again, how I know you've had a lot of, this movie has really cut through in the US and Europe. Why do Australians struggle so much to respect kangaroos in any sort of way you could even imagine, with even comments like that? How do you guys account for it?
I mean, I think one of the colonial ideas we had, Liam, was to take over and change the landscape to make it more European. And that goes across with Indigenous relationships, with land, just the surface of the land relationship, and with the wildlife. And so our idea was not to kind of see what was here and how to coexist with it, but to really change the landscape. And, you know, I think we really build on that idea for you know, the last 250 years. The colonialists really have, you know, put that in, and I think that's why farmers stick with that idea, kind of a very traditional idea of changing the landscape for our needs. So we never really have loved them. And when Mick and I took the film around the world, of course, you know, kangaroos are the one of the leading icons in the whole world of a country. You could travel anywhere, whatever language, and you say
on a Qantas plane.
Yeah, and they're like kangaroo, straight out, like, you know, wherever you're traveling, on any boat or train or in any back streets, kangaroo, they all know it. So, and of course, it's a huge part of our tourism industry, people wanting to come and see a kangaroo in the wild. So it's such a weird idea that I think it's almost like, you know, just a sort of a dark part of our psyche that we just kind of keep to this old record going around, rather than really celebrate what's actually what we've got, especially when overseas hasn't got wildlife like this in many, many places because of urbanization and population expansion. So look, I think
and how do you think I mean, the kangaroo is a native animal, been here for millions of years. How has it just become very, very smart people can just buy hook, line and sinker that they're a pest? How do you even start to try and communicate that if they were a pest, when Captain Cook turned up, they would have been jumping out of every, you know, how do you even start to unravel that?
Well, I think slowly, and the conversations have definitely started. I think the other thing is not being afraid to question Australia's farming practices, because just because a farmer says this is how it needs to be, that we need to get rid of them, is that the only opinion that matters? And I think, you know, personally, I travelled thousands of kilometres through New South Wales and Queensland making this film, and I had the farmers look me in the face and try and tell me that it was the kangaroo's fault. And I'd look around their property and I'd ask them, I'd say, really? You're going to blame the kangaroos for what's going on your property? I mean, as an Australian, it didn't make sense to me that it was the kangaroo's fault. And luckily, there are farmers out there that are sympathetic and are looking at this notion of coexisting with our wildlife. And we need to, you know, we need to celebrate them and give them a voice, because farmers are such a big part of this solution. And we can't, the last thing that we want is this us and them mentality, which is what seems to happen. Our social media is full of this us and them, and that's not what we need. We need farmers to be part of the discussion, because in making the film, we used to say to the farmers that were shouting at us, oh, there's plagues. And we would say, well, please let us know when there's a plague so we can come and film them, because we want to make, it's a cinema experience. We want to show cinematic, you know, plagues. That's amazing. I want to see that. We kept pleading with them, all of them, to come, you know, let us know. And not once did they ever say, oh yeah, come now, there's a plague. So we never ever saw any evidence of the misinformation that they've been spreading. Quite the opposite. We were really, really shocked at the low numbers that we found out there in the west of New South Wales and the west of Queensland. But luckily, as I said, there are farmers out there that are wildlife, and for me, that's an exciting space, because yeah, let's encourage that and encourage that conversation.
And a sort of filmmaker question, I suppose, is it's easy to be seen as you're green or you're sort of so pro animal, but this film has a lot of interviews with all sides of the debate. How did you did you do some Ali G4? How did you actually interview these people? And you interviewed very fairly and let them speak. What were your sort of tactics to get into those?
Well, we sort of approached it. We approached it with the attitude that this is a controversial topic. I don't think you didn't have to be living in a cave to not know that. So we approached the making of the film telling everyone, this is going to be controversial. It just can't not be. So we just went in with that attitude, and but we also, as storytellers, that's the sort of films we make. We want to be able to show what all sectors are saying, despite what our personal opinions might be, and we find that's a better way of telling stories. Wouldn't you say, Kate? I mean, that's the way we like to tell stories. But yeah, we went in saying, this is going to be controversial.
I think
maybe for you, Kate, too.
Yeah, one of the things that we found interesting was at the time there's these fantastic people, scientists and vets and activists working for kangaroos, but they were sort of few and far between. So it was an interesting journey to really find out what was going on. And once we started filming, whistleblowers also came forward and they heard about us and they heard that there was a film being made. So there is like all these little bubbling things happening around the country, and it's really great. One of the things I think the film's really done is brought all those little bubbles a bit together. So we're kind of making much more of a big steamrolling team now, and really starting to talk to, right across the board. And I think I'm just going to do a bit of a plug here for World Kangaroo Day on October the 24th, because that's one of the initiatives that the Kangaroos Alive has set up to bring all those voices together. Because people really do. The movie's called a love-hate story because people really do love them as well. So it's quite confusing. Farmers who shoot them love them. It's not so black and white. It's a confusing relationship we have. So on World Kangaroo Day, we are pausing and creating an opportunity for people across Australia and around the world to celebrate kangaroos. Those are all the voices that we feel are an important part of the national conversation. And just some of the initiatives are, there's a fantastic photo competition going on, and already I think there's 250 photos have been entered, and boy, there's some good ones. Steve Parrish, the great wildlife photographer, and Robert Irwin from the Irwin family, who's also become a wildlife photographer, are judging the competition. And I think they're in for a tough ride, because there's some brilliant photos. And just to see, if you go to the worldkangarooday.org and look at all the photos people are taking and sort of how much love they have for the kangaroos when they take that photo, you can kind of see in the picture, like on the land, within the landscape or the light or the mist or whatever. So that's a really great thing. So I really encourage people to do that. And that itself is just kind of creating this story right across Australia. And then there's also, I know that a lot of people have been talking about an education kit, and we've also put an education kit together that's for years 7 to 12, and part of it's really been incorporated into what's possible within the Australian curriculum, and that is also being launched on World Kangaroo Day. So and that will be available for the Australian Teachers of Media site, and we'll put a lot of it on our Facebook group messages. If teachers are out there and they want to know more about it, we'll put that up. So yeah, and there's some webinars happening that day, and actually on worldkangarooday.org there's going to be an event page, so wherever you are, check in. And one thing I want to say about Australians and kangaroos is on an earlier webinar we did this year, I really loved talking to Nikki Medwell from Victoria and from the Red Box Shelter. Sorry, Nikki, because can't quite think of the name, but Red Box Shelter, yeah. And what happened in that community in Victoria was when she stepped forward and her and her husband stepped forward and became spokespeople for kangaroos in their community, people stood behind and started to volunteer. People suddenly wanted to do sewing or wanted to deliver pamphlets or wanted to invite them to the school, or a photographer came on board and wanted to donate photos. And if you want to stand up for kangaroos in your community, be the first person. And you'll notice that people will start to come behind you and say, oh, there's another person that likes that likes kangaroos in our community. And I just feel like that was a great example of how a community's really come together. And there's lots of ideas, and we'll put them up on the World Kangaroo Day page for you to start an action in your community. And that's really what World Kangaroo Day is all about.
That ties in perfectly because obviously the Tawny Frogmouth is a Northern Beaches magazine, and Susan brought this all to my attention in the first place. So Susan, I suppose, how does the Northern Beaches Animal Justice Division advocate for kangaroos? What can people from Manly to Palm Beach do?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. That's a great question. Can I just say also that we are just one regional group. There are lots of regional groups around New South Wales, and you can easily find out regional group where you are by just searching Animal Justice Party New South Wales. But what the Northern Beaches regional group did, we've done quite a lot of different advocacies for different types of animals, but we're really emulating what's happening at the parliamentary level with Mark and with Emma Hurst as well. But we thought we were going to be a part of. We did have a World Kangaroo Day action last year. Or was it the year before? I can't remember because of what's been going on. But we were in Manly, and we had a lot of people come past, but there weren't a lot of people who were positive to come up and ask us information. And I think it's this old idea that just needs to be broken down bit by bit. So we thought, well, what else can we do? And as a group, we have a whole lot of different, we're all volunteers, but we meet once a month, and we come up with ideas of how we think that we can reach out to the local community. A lot of people might think, oh, well, you're in the city, what would you know about kangaroos? And that's exactly the point. Not many people in city areas even think about kangaroos and the macropods that are in Australia. But I think for us, that's why we thought we'd come up with our action at the Spit Bridge, and we had 2 people dressed as kangaroos to gain attention. We had a big banner, and this came an idea from one of our volunteers when we meet. We thought, great idea. There were only 4 of us that were able to make that, but we calculated about 8,000 different people would have seen, cars had gone past in the time that we were there. And the big banner was a photo of a kangaroo with the phrase of loved by day, shot at night. And people did take another step, to look at that again. And we enacted what it would be a little bit at the beginning of the movie or the documentary. You saw kangaroos being shot, and you saw a kangaroo shocked by what had happened to their mate next to them, jump away, and they want to come back and see what's happening to their mates, to their part of their mob, to their family. And that's when they get shot as well. So we were trying to enact that out as well. I thought it was a really good idea from one of our members. So we're always open to lots of different ideas. But I think we're taking action. What everybody can do is talking to friends and family, sharing posts and information, encouraging people to watch the movie and to have a look at Kangaroos Alive on Facebook. And there are so many different beautiful sanctuaries as well. We saw Brolga, what's his name? The Brolga from the Northern Territory on his massive sanctuary there. If you follow those sorts of pages and just see what kangaroos really are about, that will put it in your heart. And if it's in your heart, you'll want to do something about it, I think. Other things that don't ever buy kangaroo products, furs, skins, body parts, canned kangaroo for pets, for example. And some of you may have already read about the fact that kangaroo meat that's been put into cans can have a lot of bacteria. And in Victoria, there were a number of companion animals that have died from eating and consuming that pet food. And also, I think if you have a vet, talk to your vet and just let them know what's happening to kangaroos, and the fact that it isn't a very clean or sustainable way of feeding animals or feeding people, really. The other thing is lobby your local MP, local council, send emails, letters to the editor of your paper and magazine, such as the Tawny Frog. That is a great thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I'll get my 65 walkers out there. Yeah.
That was great. Yeah, and just
There's
celebrate
something to,
kangaroos. Yeah.
So, and for Mick and Kate, you've made some pretty bold decisions in showing the cruelty, and so the film maybe can't be viewed by children necessarily, but some of the questions on the education package, how can teachers get their students this access to the knowledge you've amassed when maybe it's not appropriate for them to watch it? Yeah,
it's rated M, so which is, I think, 12 upwards, which means that it's high school. Yep. And another big plug for Australian teachers of media, Atom, who have just done an extraordinary job making this education kit. So we're really excited. Did a way better job than I think we could have. And
people can just get in touch with you, and they can, like, if there's school teachers out there right now.
Yeah, just reach out to us. In fact, because I think it's going to take some teachers to reach out, because getting on the curriculum can be difficult. But I know there's, especially in these times, in these online schooling
all the help
times.
I can get.
But seriously, the education kit has all the steps on what a teacher can do with the film, and this, as we all know, there's so many sides to this story that are just perfect for high school. You know, it's from a cultural, environmental, biological, because I mean, the amazing thing is what I've learned personally from this film is just how amazing these animals are. I mean, I'm so grateful for the time I got to spend with wild kangaroos, and still get to spend because of our wonderful connection. And a big shout out to Greg and Diane at their sanctuary, who have been so brave in this journey and continue to be brave in this journey. And I just want to, if people don't know about the Kangaroos Alive YouTube channel, please have a look, because we keep posting Greg and Diane videos of their incredible direct action and eyewitness testimony that continues to this day, unfortunately. But yeah, just getting back to that thing about how magnificent these animals are, and just hearing the stories of I didn't know half of the amazing stuff about them. Their social interactions, how sentient they are, their wonderful quirky habits, all the things that I hope that the education kit can promote, because, obviously, well, for me, if the more I care about something, the more I want to protect it. And they're wonderful, quirky, fabulous animals, and we should be so proud of them.
Well, personally, I feel the moment when the young, he's probably 12-year-old when he's belting the Joey on the ute, I feel that will stay with me forever. But that brings together so many elements of the story where, taking your kids out on these journeys and, trying to make sure that people really understand the gravity of what's going on. I mean, that for me, that's just a personal moment that really stuck with me. And, just getting that education out there in a way that maybe some parents don't want them to see the film, but can still somehow get that power. Yeah.
I think that first thing is to just really point out how beautiful they are and magnificent they are. And, we can really just turn a corner by appreciating them, I think first. And really, I mean, if you're at the airport or at a trinket shop, someone was talking about before, you can buy kangaroo scrotum and stuffy kangaroos made of actual kangaroo skin. And, if you're kind of conscious of what goes on, like you've seen some of these images in the film, you're like, oh my God, we're barbarians. What are we doing? And I think, I'm so relieved that the Animal Justice Party is there, but I think every party should be waking up to this. Like you see in the New South Wales, the Kangaroo Inquiry recently, that once people are awake to what's actually happening, everyone's interested. So the Greens were very interested in who were part of the inquiry. The National Party even was very interested. Everyone was very keen to actually find out the truth of what's going on. I think it's not that people want it like this, they've just been asleep to this. So, I think everyone should be writing to all their local members and complaining that we have these disgusting products at the airport, these disgusting products in the trinket shops around town, and unfortunately, when the Europeans and the Americans who love our kangaroos, when they watched the film, they were so shocked to see how we would treat our wildlife. So it's interesting how much work's happening on Europe now about not wanting to import kangaroo products into Europe anymore. They don't want to be part of the slaughter. They don't want to be part of the abuse to joeys, and they don't want to be part of, eating wildlife that, it's not a commercial industry to a product, not that that's okay, but this is like our wildlife. It's like the fisheries. It just disappears. It doesn't come back. So actually in Europe now, there's a lot of great projects. Do you want to talk more about Europe, Mick?
Well, yeah. Look, there's many facets to Europe. A lot of people know that we screened the film and that we were invited to screen the film in the EU Parliament, and that caused an unbelievable stir, as you can imagine, because the elected members of the European Parliament were horrified, and as a result, there's a massive campaign going on to introduce a ban into Europe, which is the largest importer of kangaroo products, and that slowly but surely. Look, I'm convinced that's going to happen because, already we've seen in Europe several top major brands banning the use of kangaroos. Once they'd seen the film, they were horrified. And some of you might know, but some big brands like Gucci and Versace and Prada, big names, Carrefour and supermarkets in France, the biggest supermarket in France, have all stopped using kangaroo products. Immediate results once people learn the truth. And that will continue through Europe, and that will continue in America. The same thing in America. People are shocked. What's interesting, though, is we hear back from colleagues in Europe and America who do write to the Australian authorities in their countries. And one meeting in particular with the Australian Embassy in Brussels after the EU Parliament screening, some of the environmental NGOs were invited to a meeting at the Australian Embassy in Brussels to discuss this campaign to ban kangaroo imports into Europe. And they were pretty shocked at what the Australian government was telling them. The Australian government's line, and not surprising as you saw it in the film, was that there's nothing to see here. This is all regulated. It's all fine. You can go home, rest assured, nothing's happening. So that's the Australian federal government line coming from embassies across the world. So that's the level that we're working at. But obviously the governments are only there because people elected them to be there, and that will change once consumer power kicks in, and once people in Europe start saying, well, no, we've actually got alternative information which we are feeding into Europe and feeding into America. There's been a bill introduced into the Congress in America that's, calling for a ban of kangaroo products into America. Again, the Australian Embassy in Washington is scrambling around trying to tell the world, no, nothing to see here. So it just gives you an idea of the level of how high up this goes. I'm not saying that to put people off. I'm just saying that that's extraordinary that there's this misinformation out there, that this sort of this fake information that's being put to the European Parliament and the US Congress. And, luckily we've got some really fantastic people on the ground in Europe and America working to change that. And all power to them.
And just on how much work you've done to create this film, do you have any idea how many hours you've spent? When did you start? What first gave you the idea? Just so people know, and not to embarrass you, Mick, but happy 60th birthday. You look 21. This is a full-on pursuit. How much time have you spent on this? It's incredible.
Well, look, I think we started looking. We were actually at the Cannes market where they sell the Cannes Film Festival, and they sell films there. And we were talking to international buyers, and they were interested in Australian films. Of course, people all over the world have this fantasy about Australia and its wildlife and its, the changing continent. So beautiful. That they were asking for Australian products, and we sort of knew that this was kind of a controversial topic, but we thought, wow, we started to pitch the idea that, do you guys know anything about kangaroos and how they're, treated in Australia? And they were just fascinated with the whole concept. So we really started, I think that was in 2010. So probably you could say now it's 11 years. Not full time, of course, but yeah, a lot of work over those many, many hours. And as you can see from the film, and people have been saying a bit tonight, that each time they watch it, they find something new to listen to, because it really is incredibly dense. And Mick and I always think, it's like writing a PhD thesis or something to make these sort of investigative films. You really put a lot of time and effort into, fact checking and getting.
I was amazed. I was amazed that no one else did it, Kate. For years, probably 2 or 3 years after we first had the idea, I was convinced that someone else was going to make it. I was kind of secretly praying that they would, because the more we researched and the more we dug, it was like a rabbit hole, wasn't it? Like we just kept going. But of course, we also knew we were onto something, because as investigative filmmakers, we knew that this was going to be new, and that's important when you make documentaries, to provide new information. But yeah, I was always amazed that it hadn't been told before. And look, it's taken a long time, Liam. It's been a long journey, but if you told me that we would go on to screen around the world and screen in the European Parliament and in Washington DC and set up a not-for-profit, I probably would have laughed at you. But that's how they take. It's literally taken on a life of its own, but we're really proud of it, and very honoured to be at this screening with the AJP, because I just feel that we're on the right side of history. Nice. That's what I'm feeling. I just feel it. I can just feel that. Yeah. So hats off to all those brave people out there that are standing up for the kangaroos, and I feel honoured to have met them. And yeah, and I just hope that I can stay in contact with them, because I just get inspired by them, every day.
Well, happy birthday. And in the film, and coming up in October with the inquiry's results, but so Uncle Max, who just has such a beautiful voice and talking about how to live in harmony with these kangaroos, what do the Aboriginal people think in terms of the kangaroo's role in Australia's 100,000 million year history, and how they actually interact with the land, and how we can apply that to whatever they find in October?
Mm-hmm. Uncle Max and Auntie Ro both spoke at the inquiry, and I really recommend for people to look for those videos of them or transcripts of those things. They both spoke incredibly beautifully, and if I may talk on their behalf tonight, of course, kangaroos are a key part of culture, both historically and ongoing. So the idea that there would be a commercial industry that would remove so callously millions of kangaroos from the landscape is devastating on, a personal, spiritual, and cultural level. They've, of course, never been asked if this is okay. And it's just another horrific nail in the Indigenous culture in this country.
Is there anything in the in the dream time where these kangaroos are out of control? Is that a story that gets spoken about? I mean,
no, we researched a lot in the film to find out, but basically, of course, I think most people are finding out now about the Indigenous farming practices that were here for millions of years, and they knew what they were doing with kangaroos. They would move them around. I mean, the word that Mick and I really think is key to this message is coexistence. They literally coexisted with kangaroos in the landscape. You know, we don't really talk about the biodiversity and the impact that kangaroos have on the landscape and the work that they do as part of the landscape, you know, spreading seeds or their foot, just there's so many layers in some ways that we still haven't like almost caught up to as a culture about what wildlife give to the landscape. And I think Indigenous people really saw that straight up. So, you know, I really encourage you. Yeah, I really encourage
in the movie about how they sort of, the way they eat the grass encourage the grass to grow.
Yeah. I really encourage people to look up the inquiry, Uncle Max and Auntie Ro, and see what they've been talking about. And yeah, it's really just another blight on our culture of sort of the greed, I guess, we have in taking things from this landscape for money. And it's only going to a few people, you know, it's not going to all of us. It's not a cultural, it's not a sort of national fund. It's just a few people are making money from our wildlife.
Yeah. And Susan, I suppose animal justice, but in beyond animal justice, trying to find the best sustainable practices so that people can actually profit from good practices. How does the Animal Justice Party try and combine protecting animals with ensuring that people can run a business and sort of be commercially viable?
Mm-hmm. What we advocate for is for money that's spent on propping up businesses that are happening right now, to use that money to help businesses transition to more sustainable ways of operating, of encouraging people in the way that they live their lives. That's the only way that we feel that we can help. It's transitioning. And also it's the education of people so that they know that there are other alternatives to what they normally would buy. So it's just becoming aware and then being intentional about the choices that people make. And that's something that the Animal Justice Party does think about quite often. And how can we provide these messages to people? So we actually use, there's 4 core values that the Animal Justice Party holds, and that is kindness, equality, non-violence, and rationality, being rational about the choices that we make. So I think that it is it's something that's going to take a long time. It is taking a long time, but I think from the documentary, from people having conversations, and from having a look at the different alternatives that there are to what we're choosing right now, we can make a big difference. Yeah.
Perfect. It's 9 o'clock, so I better let everyone go to bed. So I just want to thank Kate and Mick for phenomenal film, for Susan for bringing the protest at Spit Bridge in June to my attention. And if there's anything you guys want to say to leave with, please go for it.
Can I just say, I would like to say a very big thank you, huge thank you to Kate and Mick in particular, because I have learned so much from the first time I viewed Kangaroo on DVD. I've watched the movie a number of times, and it's led me to delve a little bit further into what kangaroos are about, and I've learned so much from that. So thank you so very much for all the time and effort that you've put into that. And I'd also like to say a big, huge thank you to you, Liam, for making this happen tonight. I mean, it was great, because we're able to lead on in through to the inquiry that will be where there will be a report handed down in Parliament, and there are a list of recommendations that they will need to consider. So I really sincerely thank you, and also all the behind the scenes people that have been working on making tonight happen too. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan and Liam. Look, there's so much to do. We're all part of a team. If you like the movie and you want to do something, look, please become an activist, and please do something in your community. It's really just all of us doing something in our community that makes a huge difference. And once you start talking with people, like talking to your family, bringing it up at the dinner table, encouraging your friends to look at the pet food, what's in their pet food, you know, every detail counts. Don't feel that you can't make a difference. I think we all have to just stand up and decide what we want our country to be in the future. You know, I think it's really important to feel like you're a voice, and we really encourage you to use World Kangaroo Day as a platform to start, initiate something in your community, whether it's a council slowing down for kangaroos sign, a learning how to look after the rescued babies, you know, become a wildlife carer, support people. I mean, donations are incredibly welcome. We work tirelessly for Kangaroos Alive, and our website, kangaroosalive.org, has a donation button, and we'd appreciate if you could donate there. And just generally start appreciating kangaroos. I think that would be fantastic. And, you know, every little area has a magazine. Well, not every, but lots of areas have a magazine like the 20 Frogmouth that, you know, you can get an article in that really starts like a movement like this.
Just pester them. They'll pay attention.
pester your local magazine, pester your local paper. And, you know, thank you so much for coming and watching. And we just appreciate every one of you, because we know how much difference you can all make.
Yeah, we're not alone. You know, I know it can be very isolating in this big wide land of ours. And on this issue in particular, it can feel like we're literally hitting our head against a brick wall, but we're not alone. And Kate and I are constantly inspired when we get our messages of people doing amazing things and great support, and particularly in Europe and America. I mean, they literally are smashing it over there. They are leading the change, because, as I said, Europe will ban the imports. The US probably will follow. So there are lots of great people around the world that are right behind us. And at the risk of repeating myself, we are on the right side of history, and you know, we will change this. But thank you, everybody, and Liam, good on you, mate. You've done a great job, and thank you for jumping on board so willingly. And as always, the AJP are just fabulous.
Thanks so much, and for everyone watching, if you find any resistance from people saying that you don't know what you're talking about with kangaroos, just ask them, if they're such a pest, how come we weren't overrun with them when we got here? Kate, I'm not too sure how to finish the thing here. So
That's okay. I've got it. Okay, we can stay on. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Sleep well.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.